This first question comes from Mikhail Hansen. He says, which position battles do you think are the most interesting this offseason? Well, I think when you look at the most interesting, it has to be what's the most deep and what's the most talented, because that means it's the most interesting. So when obviously the DB room is going to be interesting. I think the OTAs that our secondary is having so far is really impressive. I think our offense is having a really impressive OTA so far, and that's what we really want to see is the secondary have a really much improved OTAs than they did last season, and we want to see obviously their offense do better, obviously. So I think the most talented would have to be the wide receivers, just because of everything that we've heard from every single one of them. I mean, when you think about it, which is what I like to call them, Jarvis Landry, Devontae Parker, and Kenny Stills, right? You have the three-headed monster that all three of them almost had 1,000-yard seasons last season, which is insane. A lot of people forget that. And obviously Jarvis had a 1,000-yard season, and the other two almost had one. So then you look at what's behind them, and obviously 2 seasons ago in the draft, we really put an emphasis on drafting offense and improving the offense. And when you look at the players that we drafted this past draft as well, I mean, we have behind the Holy Trinity, we have Leonte Carroo, Isaiah Ford, Rashawn Scott, Chase Allen, the kid from Arkansas, who's having a really good OTAs. That's 4 different receivers that look really, really, really good. I don't know if I mentioned Isaiah Ford in that category. So, it is an insane group that is going to compete preseason. And that's something that the Dolphins wide receiver group they started off slow last season. They really started to heat up. And I'm not going to blame it all on them because of the pass protection was really poor for the first 4 games. Obviously, we know that. It was really, really poor. And even beyond that, it was continued to be poor until Dallas Thomas and Billy Turner were cut. But all 4 of them, like when you look at when you look at Leonte, what he does well, he's a great red zone threat. He's a great 50-50 point guy. He just catches everything in his vicinity, at least when he was in college. 2 seasons in a row in college where he put up 10 touchdowns at Rutgers, which is insane. You look at Rashawn Scott, really talented kid, really didn't start hitting his stride until he was in the pros, which is unfortunate because of the injuries that he dealt with throughout his college career. And obviously he just suffered an injury in OTAs, but he'll be back for training camp. It's not a serious injury. Let's see if I'm already losing my train of thought here. Then you look at Isaiah Ford, who fell all the way in the draft. It was going to be a 4th to 5th round pick, fell all the way to 7. We get a steal. Another great route running savvy player, great hands, great 50-50 point guy, really taller than a lot of people think. I mean, most of our receivers are 6 foot up. Obviously, Juice isn't, and Kenny's not, but everybody else is pretty dang big. Isaiah Ford's obviously 6 foot up, and so is Leonte Carroo, then you go to Chase Allen, the undrafted free agent this year out of Arkansas, who is having a great season, or a great OTA so far. Hopefully he can be that, not just because he's white, but I'm just trying to compare him to a great slot receiver. To help us move the trains, he can be like a Cooper Kupp, another white guy. But he can be those kind of guys, Julian Edelman, who can... he just knows where the open holes in zones are. He just gets open. He's like Chris Hogan. He's 7'11". He's open all night. He's having a great OTA so far, and Adams has been trying to use him. He's talked about in his press conferences how well he's been doing. So that one of those guys is going to have a breakout season. And obviously Devontae Parker also having a great OTA so far, and I think he's going to have that number 1 caliber wide receiver season that we all hoped that he would have. So I totally forgot to mention Jakeem Grant, who's been working all offseason. He's been throwing with Tannehill. He's been catching punts with Matt Darr. He's been really working hard on his technique. Even, Clyde Christensen said in his press conference, he probably has one of the best techniques on the team, which is saying something with Jarvis Landry. So even Jakeem Grant. So it's just a super, super, super talented group. I think it's the receiver group. I think all of them, the things that they do well is I just can't wait to see which one of them is going to have the breakout season, because one of them is. I mean, one of them, there's just no way, because they're all super talented roster on anybody else's team. Like, let's say the Seahawks, or not even the Seahawks, or the 49ers, or the Rams. All of those guys would make the team. So it's going to be great to see. It's going to be awesome to see. It's like the 72 Dolphins with their great backfield. Like, this receiver core is really good. So All right, this next question comes from Duncan. He says, "Do you think we're gonna start Raekwon McMillan on game one or someone else instead?" Question mark. He says. Also, have you heard anything about Isaiah Ford? Have I heard anything about Isaiah Ford? We'll answer this because Raekwon McMillan's going to be a long answer. Isaiah Ford, I have heard some things about from different people. I've heard that, he hasn't really turned heads. He hasn't really impressed anybody at camp. I know that Adam hasn't took the time to talk about him, which is not a good sign. So he hasn't really turned heads in OTA so far, which is when skill position players really need to do that because they're not in pads, which, it doesn't mean a whole lot. I mean, in training camp, he could really turn things around. Maybe, the gap between OTAs and training camp, really play himself into playing weight, really condition himself. So maybe it's a little too early to say that, but so far in OTAs, or at least in OTAs, he did not turn heads, which is not the greatest sign in the world. Because other receivers did, like Chase Allen or Sean Scott. Devontae Parker obviously had a really good OTA, so a bunch of other receivers did. And obviously Jarvis had an amazing, like he always does, and Kenny. So everybody that we need to have a good OTAs did, and some surprises like Rashawn Scott and Chase Allen. And in terms of Raekwon McMillan, I know you're asking me if he'll start week one, which we'll get into, but we'll start with OTAs. Raekwon, when he first got to OTAs, and I think even in rookie minicamp, one of the first things you really saw from Raekwon McMillan is his speed. I can't remember who he was guarding, if it was Kenyon Drake on a wheel, I can't remember, but he pretty much locked him up, and he was one of the fastest players on the team. Kenyon might be the fastest player, and he was running stride for stride with him, and that really surprised a lot of people, because, the funny thing about Raekwon McMillan is his draft analysis, and some of the scouts, when you look at their analysis of Raekwon and like Mike Mayock, some of the bigger names in the industry, you see that what they say is the kid he's super smart, probably the highest IQ out of any middle linebacker to come out of that draft, which is saying a lot. But it's not a question of the smarts and the leadership, because he has it in spades. It's, does he have the physical ability to be a 3-down player, right? Who does that sound like to you? It sounds a lot like Zach Thomas to me. So Raekwon McMillan, I think, surprised. I think he checked some question marks and boxes in terms of his speed, because he ran a way faster 40 time than a lot of people gave him credit for. And that 40 time is definitely running the 4.6. I think is definitely good enough to be a middle linebacker for all 3 downs in this league, because Raekwon really does play off of his smarts. He prepares better than anybody. He just understands schemes. So I think, and playing in the Big Ten, I think really is going to help him transition to the NFL, because he played against a lot of pro-style offenses. So, and again, also playing in the Big Ten really prepared him physically for the NFL. So I think Raekwon is transition to the NFL has been, transition to the NFL has been really smooth, and he has checked a lot of those question marks. And the good thing about Raekwon, again, it's the physical tools that everybody has the question marks about. The mental and everything else that is probably more important, I would say definitely more important than the physical, in terms of an NFL or college player transitioning to the NFL, learning the playbook, getting acclimated, how to be a pro, how to prepare, how to do all those kinds of things. Those are things that rookies really struggle with. Does not struggle with any of those things. The question marks were, can he physically be a 3-down player? And so far, he's proved that he can. Combine, he proved that. So far in OTAs, he's proved that he's a lot faster than a lot of people gave him credit for. So it is interesting. I do think he's going to start week one because of all of those things, and I think he's just going to get better, and I can't wait to see him play. I think he's just going to get better. And all of those things are great signs. I think he's going to be... I don't think he might be our rookie of the year. He might be the best Dolphins rookie in our class this upcoming season, just because of how him and Charles Harris, though, have had great OTAs. So I'm not going to say that. So we'll see. But both of them are 1 and 2. They might be our best 1-2 in a very, very long time. So yeah, that's what I think about the whole Raekwon and Isaiah Ford. Clayton, he says, do you think the Dolphins should trade for a slot corner? No, I don't think they should trade for a slot corner. Do I think they need a slot corner? I think it's too early to tell. The whole Bobby McCain situation, everybody hates Bobby McCain. Because of the last season, he really, I think, was probably his best/worst season, if that makes any kind of sense. He just really wasn't consistent, but he definitely made a whole lot more plays than he really ever has. He made a ton of plays. He got sacks, he got picks. He made big plays in big moments. I think Bobby McCain is getting better as the years go on. I mean, obviously sometimes he's easily beat off routes. His technique needs to get a little bit better. I think I think all of those things will improve. He is the ultimate competitor. He's super competitive. He works hard. He's trying to do his best. I think Michael Thomas is right behind him. I think Michael Thomas, you could probably say some of the things that he has over Bobby McCain. He's a little bit tougher. He's a better tackler in space. His techniques are probably a little bit better. He's not the athlete that Bobby McCain has over Michael Thomas. He's just a better athlete. He probably has a lot more upside than Michael Thomas does, but Michael is just as smart, just as competitive. He's way more, because the slot corner role, not a lot of people understand, it's a very physically demanding position. I mean, you have to make tackles in space constantly. You're playing the quickest player on the offense every single week, so you have to be athletic, you have to be quick, your hips have to be, your technique has to be above average, I would say, to be a really good slot corner in this league. I think it's harder to be an outside. It's probably harder to be a slot corner than it is an outside corner, because it's a physically demanding job. You're constantly in the middle of the field. You have to be a good run defender. Teams will run at you. It's a really hard. You might as well be playing safety, seriously. It's a really, really hard job. And I think Michael Thomas, in terms of being able to stop the run, teams aren't going to run at Michael Thomas because he's played safety. He's a physical guy. He's a big guy. He's a better tackler in space. His technique's a little bit better. But again, Bobby McCain, way better athlete than he is. Probably better ball skills, or maybe that's a little bit equal on both parts. But they both have pretty dang good ball skills. We've seen that in the past. Obviously, Michael Thomas has made some big plays, and so has Bobby. So they both are good blitzers. So that competition is going to be interesting to see. But I think ultimately Bobby's probably going to win it. Because of Michael Thomas's role on special teams. We'll see, though. I mean, we'll see. In terms of outside forces that we could grab and pull into the organization, I still think Darrelle Revis is the best answer to that puzzling question, I think. I think he's probably the best solution to the problem, if there is a problem. I think Bobby McCain, again, everybody likes the new sexy thing, but he's going into his third season. Hopefully we'll see a huge jump. Depending on who you like better, it's between Michael Thomas and Bobby McCain. Whoever wins the job wins the job. I mean, depending when you watch the games, who you think's a better talent, that is up to you guys to decide. So let's move on to the next question. This next question comes from Antoine Jackson. He says, should the Miami Dolphins trade for Sheldon Richardson? No, and here's why. It's not because the guy's not talented, and he is very talented. Obviously, former Defensive Rookie of the Year. He's had a great career with the Jets. Interesting personalities. You hear things from different people. But the reason is obviously he's going to be a free agent this upcoming offseason. And basically, if you traded for him, you're giving up something for basically nothing. You're basically renting a player for one season. And I think another good point to bring up is in terms of us trading for him. I think it would be best to not trade for him now, and obviously he plays with us one season. We have other people we have to get into long-term deals, and then he goes to some other team and makes a ton of cash, right? So I think the best thing to do is see how our defensive tackles perform this year. Obviously, we drafted some really good talent at that position with Davon Godchaux. I always mess up his name, and Vincent Taylor. So just to see, and obviously Jordan Phillips could have a breakout season. So basically, the point is you don't want to just trade a bunch of stuff for a player that's just going to be with you for one season. And if worst comes to worst, like I said, and position do not perform well, then we'll just go, I guess, crack at him in free agency, but definitely not trade for him. This next question comes from David. He says, how many wide receivers will we keep, and does the number include kick returner / punt returner, or is that a separate category? I want to say it's a separate category because people like Jakeem Grant, other than him, obviously Jarvis Landry, he would probably, I don't really like, I mean, Jarvis is a great punt returner, kick returner. I think he's a little overrated, not to be blasphemous, but I don't think he's like the guy. I would rather have Kenyon or Jakeem back there than Jarvis isn't a burner. But anyway, the point is, he does make play. I'm not saying he's not a playmaker. But Jarvis, I think last year, some of his punt returns, kick returns, not the greatest in the world. But anyway, the point is the only other receivers that I think would make the team as a kick returner / punt returner, none of them, like obviously some of them would make it as gunners, but even that's some tough competition. I think most of the receivers, there's going to be some good players that are cut, man. I mean, you look at Chase Allen, he's not going to return. I mean, he might might be a gunner. Then obviously Rashawn Scott, he's not a kick returner, punt returner. Obviously some of these players will make the practice squad. So I would say, if I had to guess, this is what I would say. If I had to guess how many would make it, I would say, let's just name them. Jarvis would make it. Obviously Jarvis, Kenny, and Devontae, that's a no-brainer. Behind them, I'm going to say Leonte Crew makes it. I'm going to say Rashawn Scott makes it. And I'm going to say Isaiah Ford and Chase Allen make the practice squad, possibly, or I think both of them is going to be. Both of them are going to be on special teams in some kind of capacity. So I think most of them are going to make it for sure. And obviously, Jakeem makes it as a kick returner / punt returner. This next question comes from SoFlo Sports. He says, "What needs to happen this year that will help us repeat our success from last year?" Basically, there's nothing. I mean, I guess finishing games, we were one of the better teams at finishing games in the fourth quarter, but in terms of stuff we need to improve on to continue to be consistently a force in the ASC, we have to stay on the field longer. Again, I've talked about this a million times, so I'll keep this short and sweet. We were last in the league in offensive snaps taken, and we were second last in the league in third down conversion rate, which is terrible. That is terrible. The only team that was worse than us was the LA Rams. Okay, so that's not good company to keep, guys. So we just have to we have to stay on the field more and convert third downs. That's basically it. And on defense, got to be better against the run. That's it. That is what we have to do to improve to sustain success from last year. This next question comes from Chris Prez. Are the Miami Dolphins capable of beating the New England Patriots? Yes. I don't know why this is a mind-boggling thing to say. Like, we just shook the Dolphins can beat the Patriots. Were you not around for the last 6 years, for God's sakes? The only time Tannehill has ever lost to the Patriots at home was his rookie year. That was it. Can you guys believe that? Nobody else knows. Like, it's like, have you been around? Yes, we're capable of beating the Patriots. We've beat Super Bowl Patriots teams. Our team, excuse me. So I really don't understand that. If Tannehill and our team, half our team, we'd have our practice squad out there, we didn't have the Water Boys out there, we would have beat the Patriots anyway. Okay? So yes, we're definitely capable of beating the Patriots. This next question comes from Patrick. He says, "Do you think Isaac Asiata will win the starting guard job, and will Xavier Howard be playing outside, in your opinion?" Yes, I think I think Isaac Asiata will win the starting left guard position over Ted Larson. And who knows, there could be an insane mix-up where Ted Larson starts and Isaac starts and Jermon doesn't start. Who knows? I would say as of right now, I think Isaac. When all is said and done, I would predict Isaac and Jermon being the starting guards. And in terms of Xavier Howard playing inside in the slot position, that's not going to happen. Xavier Howard is going to be our starting corner. I think he's the best outside corner that we have. I think he's going to have a tremendous year this upcoming season. I do put that much stock in him. I really do. I think he's going to be great. In terms of players that, just to kind of branch out your question just a little bit more, in terms of players that I've seen that I'm surprised that have played certain positions, Cordrea Tankersley has played a lot of slot corner. He's played a ton of slot corner, nickel corner, whatever you want to call it. Same dang thing. But anyway, he's played that position a lot in OTAs, so I would not be surprised if we saw him as a dark horse in that race for that slot corner role, because he's played a lot of it and he's gotten a lot of reps at it, so maybe the Dolphins like what they see when he plays the slot corner position. So that is going to be it, guys. I am Skaggs1383. This was your Miami Dolphins fan Q&A for this week. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you guys in the next one.